Greetings Wanderer, this is Atlas here and welcome to the Void. Today I'm going to be reacting and breaking down a song called Nameless Song from the first Dark Souls game. This song was the winning one from a community post that I did asking you which song from the first Dark Souls game should I do next, because I'm currently playing the game and I'm actually posting the gameplay in this channel, so in case you want to check that out, I'm gonna leave it right here in this card and also in the description of this video in case you want to check it out. And the overwhelming support was for Nameless Song, as you can see here in a comment from Julian Martin. Nameless Song. A lot of people are going to say both things, but Nameless Song is just too good. So this is the final song that I'm going to be doing from the first entry in the franchise, Dark Souls, the first game, because of course I'm playing the game right now and obviously I'm gonna be listening to the songs in the playthrough, but I understand that this is probably like the last song that is played in the game. So I'm safe in that regard. Like it's gonna be a while for me to get there. Okay, so of course I have broken down previous Dark Souls songs like Gwyn, Lord of Cinder, Darkeater, Midir, and so on and so forth, which I'm going to be leaving in this card right here and also in the description of this video. So at least I'm to a certain degree acquainted to the original soundtrack of this franchise. So I'm looking forward to it. Onward. Okay. Nameless Song. Dark Souls. Boom. What a change. This is insanely beautiful. And what a change from other tracks that are broken down from this IP. Oh dear Lord of Sin. This song was too... Wait. This song was too good for its own sake. And you know what? I read a couple of comments saying that the first Dark Souls doesn't have an OST as good as the other ones, as the other entries in the franchise, as Dark Souls 2 and 3. Now, of course, this is one isolated song, so you can really judge an OST, a whole original soundtrack, by just one song. But this is like... I mean, it has been only a couple of times firing in between each other in which I just had to sit and go through it, like emotionally go through it, you know. One of those instances was God's theme from Berserk. This is another one of those times. It hit right in the feels, like hard, really hard. But of course, I know that you don't want to see me blabber about feelings and emotions, because I mean, it will be a mute statement. You just have to watch the reaction that I just did. But what I'm going to leave for the breakdown, and I'm going to open with this, is that this song has a lot of space for you to achieve those emotions, and also the song is very melancholic. It is insanely beautiful, like it has a sense of hope. But we're going to be talking more in depth about those things in the breakdown, so let's break it down. Okay, so let's start with the breakdown. First of all, I'm going to be mentioning things that are isolated towards certain instruments, and of course the amazing female voice that we hear in the song. And then I'm going to be talking about some of the things that impact the song in a wider scale, in a global scale. Okay. So, well, maybe this to start the breakdown is more of a global thing that is going on in the song, but also is one of the quintessential characteristics that there is in the track, which is less is more. And I've talked about this so many times, you know. This is a principle that is that is used very often in art, you know, in very specifically in film. Less is more. In film acting, less is more. You always hear acting coaches and so on and so forth talking about that, especially for drama. For comedy is different. For drama, you often hear like less is more. So this track achieves that completely. Less is more. You get more of the song when you have lesser instruments, and it's more tamed and more toned down, and it just lets you immerse yourself in the track, because you are not saturated in so many things that you have to pay attention. So you just focus on the important things in the song, you know. If you have something is super insanely epic, you know, like let's say a Final Fantasy 7 track, or you know, something super, like for example Slave Knight Gael, which I did a breakdown. I'm gonna leave it right here in this card and also in the description of this video. In a Slave Knight Gael, you know, that song is super insanely epic, you know, which I think it's the track that closures the whole Dark Souls, you know, story, I guess. But in this case, you know, this is like the complete counterpart, you know, like the polar opposite to that track, and in a good way, of course, absolutely in the best way possible. So I did talk a little bit about a global thing, but now let's talk more in terms of specific things. The first thing that I want to talk about is the female voice. The female execution, I mean the performance of the singer is insane. Like, this singer rocks my world. Because her performance was exquisitely good. I mean I have no other words to actually articulate it. It's incredibly good. And you know, she has this tone, this quality to her, to the way she's performing the track, which has this bittersweetness and melancholic touch to it. Now, it's very important because the female voice that we hear in the track is the one that is playing or singing the leitmotif of the track. So, being a human who delivers the main melody and the leitmotif of the track adds a lot to the emotional I don't want to call it baggage, but it's the emotional charge, let's say, that is put into this track. Because although all the instruments have or contribute to that premise, having a human being carrying that hits harder because it's more familiar to our nature, you know. That's why, of course, that depends on different listeners and so on and so forth, you know. Some people gets more get more of the feels from the string section or things like that. But I think that overall people will get more moved with a human element, you know, our organic element. So the fact that there is a female voice, a solo female voice singing the leitmotif, actually adds to that premise. Other things that I want to talk about is the execution of the harp. The harp, to me, is like the foundation of this song, because in the harp is where we hear the chord progressions being played in an arpeggiated performance, execution, you know. And there's something that I'm going to be talking more about later, which is how the chord progressions are so meticulously composed in the harp, which is the foundation from which the singer is actually singing the leitmotif, because it goes back and forth in between arpeggiating minor chords and major chords, back and forth in between each other, and that's what gives attention to the track. But I just want to leave for that later, because I just want to carry on with the harp. So the harp has also this very sweet sound to it, okay? So that is like a counterpart to a certain degree to the melancholic, somber tone of the voice. So you have, like, of course, the vocals also have like the bittersweetness in it, but the harp is the instrument that actually brings more of the sweet than the bitter, let's say. Even though sometimes it went somber, quote unquote, or sad, when it went into playing those arpeggiated minor chords. But overall, the harp is the foundation. It's the foundational instrument in this composition, because it is what plays the chord progression, and is also the instrument that is giving balance towards you know, the bittersweetness of the whole thing. Now let's talk about the strings. The strings section, you know, the violin and the cello was, I mean, the execution of the instruments were perfect, to be honest. Like, I have nothing else to add in that regard. you know, how the strings come into the song, very inconspicuous, and they come with the right amount of intensity. They have the right amount of vibrato. The vibrato in the string section was so incredibly delicate and minute, and it has to be that way, because remember that this is a song about less is more. So if you do something big, it's gonna be very noticeable, you know. So in these kind of songs where less is more, you have to execute your instruments in a very delicate, almost microscopic, nanometric way, you know? Because like I said before, something big or bigger is going to be very noticeable, and it's going to do a disservice to the track, because the song is all about, again, less is more. So the execution on the strings, you know, the legato execution that is from the beginning to the end is so incredibly perfect for the song. Like, they did an amazing job, I guess. It's what I'm trying to say. Okay, now let's talk about the things that are more like an umbrella overall over the whole song, you know, that it pertains to the whole song in general. So I did talk about the arpeggiated chord progression in the harp, which is the foundational element of the track, in my opinion. It goes in between major chords and minor chords. Why is this important? Well, because first of all, it's laying the foundation from which we hear the leitmotif being played or sang or executed, but at the same time, it's contributing to a lot of the tension that we hear in the song. Now, you might think like, well, what's the tension in it? Well, the tension is that it goes in the bittersweetness of the sound of the song. It sounds melancholic, it sounds bittersweet, because major chords are often associated with happy feelings, something happy, something joyful, hopeful, so on and so forth. And minor chords are associated with something sad, something melancholic, or something somber, something brooding, so on and so forth, you know. So they are like polar opposites in a sense, but when you use them together in a composition or in a chord progression, it creates the balance in between, you know, the happy part and the sad part, and it's like a dialogue in between polar opposites, let's say. So that brings balance to the song, but also brings the tension to the song, because you don't feel like the song is completely sad. So sometimes you in the song you feel sad, but suddenly you start to feel a little bit, you know, a little bit hopeful, but then it goes sad again, but then it recovers the joyfulness of it, and then it goes melancholic again. And this also is attributed to one of the quintessential parts of being a human being. You know, in general, humans don't like change. I mean, we in general have trouble accepting change. So when we hear a song and we hear this back and forth, it's like we try to get accustomed to a certain mood, to a certain sound, but then when it changes, it leaves you with that wondering of what happened, because I was feeling so joyful and happy, and suddenly I'm starting to feel kind of down and sad, and so on and so forth. It's because we have that thing about change, that we don't like change. But at the same time, which is crazy, is that when we hear the same thing, it gets boring, and then we don't pay attention to it. So in order to keep the listener interested in the track, we have to sacrifice the being boring for making you suffer. Something like that. So yeah, that's the back and forth in between the major and minor chord progression in the harp, the arpeggiated chords, and that's the tension that is built within the song, very, very in a very delicate, elegant way. Now, a very important element of this track is that there is a lot of space, because since less is more, So the track has a lot of space, you know, because there's fewer instruments playing in the song, and therefore it gives you like a whole vacuum, let's say, to fill. But that vacuum is not going to be filled by the song itself. The vacuum is going to be filled by you. And by that I mean that it gives space for the emotions of the emotions. Meaning that with very few instruments and very few very beautiful, incredibly amazing arrangements in the composition, the composer was able to leave the whole other space that was available for him to introduce more instruments and so on and so forth, for you to feel the feels. Now let's talk briefly about the final things of this track. First of all, the use of silence. We hear that there is a variation in the leitmotif roughly at the middle of the track, because this track is almost 7 minutes long, whereas there's silence. Silence is another element or another resource, let's say, that composers have to create tension and other things in a song. So when we hear the female singers using the silence, leaves you with a sense of wondering. Hey, what happened? Again, it comes back to the back and forth, the tension, leaving the listener wondering what's going to happen next. And also remember that we don't like change. So when we hear the variation, it's like, but I want to hear the leitmotif completely again. But this silence serves as a resource to build the tension even further. Okay, so silences are in general a very useful resource, and one silence in a song can make or not a song completely. Like one silence, I kid you not. I can't remember one example to tell you in that regard, but believe me, one thing in a song can change the track completely, and that actually happens in this track. But I'm going to be mentioning that at the end of the video. Apologies. Another element that is present in the song is that the harp, there is a part which is probably the most minimalistic, let's say, or the part where the less instruments are involved, which is a part where you can hear the harp, and I think what we hear is also a glockenspiel. So these are the two most sweet sounding instruments that we hear in the track, and it's very curious that the composer decided to make us a very brief section of that towards the end of the song, because this section in particular is the one that is signals the end of the track. Now that is brilliant in my opinion, because we have the whole bittersweetness of the track playing for most of the length of the song. Then comes this part that is very sweet. It almost sounds like a lullaby, very, very tamed, very beautiful, and so on and so forth. And then the song retakes the leitmotif at the end. But now I'm going to talk about the end and then the thing that changes the track completely. The song doesn't have an ending. It is left unresolved. Why do I say it's left unresolved? Well, when you listen to the leitmotif at the end of the track, you hear that the final part, like the final section that the singer is singing, that note that the singer sings at the end is what gives this track the unresolved nature to it. Like, and it's crazy to think that's what I was thinking, what I was talking about, apologies, in regards to one thing changing the whole track. This is an almost 7-minute track, and that one thing changed the entire track completely. That one song, that one note, apologies, changed the whole thing. And let me look for the thing at the end for a second. Okay, so the leitmotif at the end of a song is and it ends on that note. But if the track was to be resolved and there was a complete conclusion to it, apologies, it will be something like you know, there's another note on a lower register to end the track, but no, the track doesn't end there. I mean, it hasn't ended, but it's unresolved. So it makes sense because the story carries on. Now, of course, when this was made, this was composed. I mean, I don't know if they already had plans to do another game, but at least they left it open. Like, well, maybe we're gonna be able to make another game if this is very successful. So let's leave it open, because at the same time we have like a further story to it. So it works like insanely good. The track is unresolved. There's a second game and there's a third game. So of course the ending of this track, that one note at the end, is what signals what was coming. So there, people might at the time might have been going crazy about the continuation of the Dark Souls series in Twitter or whatever, but the you know, the leak of the next video game was in this particular song. So I don't know. So yeah, I think this was a fantastic song. It was insanely good. Probably my favorite part, like I said before, that ending note was what changed the entire track completely. But if I had to say what was my favorite part, I think, aside from that, apologies, is the vocal performance was... That was the thing that hit me the most, you know, in the feels. So yeah, I think I'm gonna give this track... I'm gonna give this track a diamond badge for sure. It's insane. It's insanely good. So yeah, thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and share it with your friend. Also, please don't forget to visit my Patreon in case you want to sway the influence towards what I'm going to be breaking down next, or my Ko-fi profile in case you want to make a one-time contribution. You can also visit my Ko-fi store in case you want to make a personal request of a song of your choosing, either an anime or a video game track, or my Teespring shop where you can get merch and all that jazz. And of course, ex nihilo nihil fit.